Hello, investors. This is Todd Thomas, Associate Portfolio Manager with Revere Asset Management. Today is Saturday, September 19th. The time is 10 o'clock a.m. Coming to you from Boca Raton, Florida, to bring you the Revere Roundup weekend walkthrough. State of the market, still well in that four coveted green arrows. Not much to say here as all the indexes are above the short, medium, and long-term 200-day moving averages, and the leaders are acting quite stellar. Theme of this week, indexes make new weekly highs on a Fed rate cut. And I would say another thing to say about this week is momentum names led. Going through the weekly gains, the Big Eight, which is the Mag 7 plus Netflix, up 3.36%. Huge gains there, led by Tesla, Google, and Meta. The RG8, which is the Revere Growth 8 Composite, was up 2.97%. And again, that was really led by the IBD 50 as well as ARC and the momentum names. S&P 500 up 1.22%. However, the equal weight was relatively flat, only up 0.1%, still consolidating there. Q's up 2.16%, and the equal weight's up 1.98%. NASDAQ strength across the board there. Dow up 1.08%. Mid caps again, still consolidating flat on the week. Russell 2000 resurged this week after a breather last week, up 2.15%. 60/40 portfolio up 0.57, GROTECTION up 1.10%, and Turbo with back-to-back huge week up 5.05% after last week's 6.5% gain. What happened last week? Quite a bit of news out there, as we just discussed. All major indexes, including the Russell 2000, close at all-time weekly highs. Fed cut by 25 basis points and leaves the door open for potentially two more cuts. However, retail sales increased 0.6%. And the Philly Fed Manufacturing Index surprised substantially higher to the upside, which showed manufacturing activity well exceeding expectations. The 10-year yields rebounded sharply after undercutting the 4% mark after the Fed cut on Wednesday. So again, leaving the potential for more rate cuts. However, these numbers were quite strong this week. Elon Musk disclosed a $1 billion buy of his own stock on Monday. That was his first buy of Tesla stock since 2020, sending Tesla up nicely on the week. Intel leads the chips to a big gain on the week as NVDA takes $5 billion stake in the company and is going to be using Intel for some key chips. Quantum stocks surged over several catalysts. CrowdStrike guide net new annual recurring revenues to up 20% or more in fiscal 27. China Cyberspace Administration ordered companies to stop using NVIDIA's AI chips, and Meta unveiled new smart glasses at the Connect conference for a $799 smart glass with Ray-Ban, as they bet on glasses being a new way for users to interact with AI, although many still believe this is still several years away. Darden, Cracker Barrel, and Lennar all fall on disappointing earnings. Google hits $3 trillion in market cap and overtakes OpenAI, with Gemini now the number one free app on Apple. Oracle reportedly in talks with Meta. This came at the end of the day yesterday for a $20 billion cloud computing pact. So Oracle continuing with its string of good news here over the last few weeks. Trump, after the close, announced that the U.S. and China approved the TikTok deal. Oracle being one of the members of a group of buyers, apparently. The SEC will consider Trump's proposal to shift earnings reports to semi-annually from quarterly. We'll see where that goes, but the SEC is taking that recommendation as a potential. This is some news in the quantum computing area. I said there were several catalysts. You can pause and just read to see what some of those were, but that group now for the last 2 weeks has been on a huge run. Weekly momentum winners. You can see here we've had a few. SITM and Oust were on the list. Rambus, IREN for the third straight week of double-digit gains here. This is both in Turbo and Toddzilla holdings. IANA OD, which I brought up last week, that was the number one winner, continued with another 12% gain on the week. App, SoFi, Affirm, all in good standing here. On the downside, Rocket Lab was down 10% on a secondary offering. Otherwise, some normal pullbacks in other areas. On the earnings calendar, Micron comes out this upcoming week. KB Homes, home builders were a little disappointing last week. UEC, as well as Costco, Jabil. So still kind of at the end of that earnings season as we go into the third quarter reports next month. Earnings power, IBD had a nice screen here. These are select IBD stocks that are expected to grow their earnings by at least 25% in the current year and next fiscal year. WGS, which has been on the watch list for months with huge gains, leading the list. Micron in second place here with earnings coming out next week. Firm, Reddit, ADVL and biotech area, App, A-Lab, Palantir, Rhythm, and ATAT. So several of these names have been on our watch lists or our holdings for a long time, including Astera Labs, Reddit, Palantir. Big economic week ahead with the global S&P PMI, as well as new home sales, third quarter GDP estimates in the deflator, durable orders, as well as retail inventories, existing home sales, and the Fed coveted inflation indicator, the PCE prices, as well as personal income and spending. So huge week ahead, which all eyes will be on as well. Now going to the index charts as well as the inter-asset correlation. You can see the S&P made a 1.22% gain, continuing its streak of all-time closing weekly highs. Not a bearish chart by any means. Overall, a lot of people are worried about just getting overheated and potentially looking like 1999 in the internet bubble. However, as you can see, the S&P's 200-day moving average extension right now is only 11%. That was substantially higher during the dot-com bubble as that approached over 40 to 50%, I believe. So still not extended. The markets in general are making new highs, but really, if you look in the grand scheme of things, not that far off from this breakout here that occurred from the spring or the early winter, late winter highs. That line is not very nicely drawn, but when we broke that 61.47 level, we're really just kind of nicely riding the 10-week, staying above that and not super extended. So going into the RSP, still a big consolidation here. Again, we broke through that 189.99 and have backed off since then. If we can get some broad participation, this can only fuel the market higher. Hughes with a 2.16% week, continuing the record gains. Equal weights also participated, although still off the highs from back in late July. 140.24 there. Touching up against that area this week, however, not able to break through, but a nice flat base consolidation there. Again, if we can see the RSP and the equal weight starts to break out, that would be very bullish for the market. Dow, new all-time closing high, up 1% on the week. Mid caps, basically a 3-week tight here, not much going on here. So again, weakest of all the indexes. Russell, new all-time weekly closing high, up 2.16%, breaking through again this 2466 level interweek. However, closing below that, but on the grand scheme of things, on a weekly basis, this is an all-time weekly closing high. VIX was up this week, up 4.67%. Not much to say there, still in a good area in that 15 area. Dollar index was flat. Gold was up again 1.12%, but the miners continue their torrid run up 3.74%. Silver up 1.83%. Bitcoin took a breather down 1.5%. ETHA was down 5%. So cryptos kind of took a breather here and are slowing down a little bit. Oh, bond market was down a little bit this week as the retail sales numbers came out strong. The 20-year bond was down 1%, and 30-year yields were up 1.65% at 4.75%. The 10-year yields, after going below that 4% on Wednesday, but then closing at the highs of the day on Wednesday, followed through on Thursday and Friday for a total gain of 1.9%. And the yield is now 4.139% here, but still in this downward trend. Mag 7 up 3.46%, and those will go into these names. Apple had a nice week, up 4.8%, as iPhone 17 pre-orders are strong, and that broke into a higher high here, and building this series of higher highs, higher lows, and nice volume on Friday. Amazon still consolidating. Microsoft had a strong recovery this week, up 1.5%. However, still building this base right now. Meta up 3% on the week, still also in this space, but looking quite constructive. Again, these are not the leaders of the market. Relative strength is basically flat on these, but they're still holding up well. NVIDIA only down a fraction, but the only Mag 7 name down on the week, as China continues to recommend to their tech companies to not buy NVIDIA chips. You can see here, NVIDIA is still growing rapidly, up 40% estimated for fiscal 27. However, we do see a deceleration of earnings from triple digits down to 45%, which is still massive, but you can see that deceleration. So again, slowing down, relative strength, trending downward on this name as it builds this flat base of about 11%. Again, many other names are running right now, so these are not the names you necessarily want to be trafficking in, other than Google, which made a new high up 5.7%, and Netflix, which is consolidating up 3%, just kind of trending here, but this has a nice earnings profile, 29, 27, 22, and 20% growth still, with teen growth in the sales department. Not bad. Tesla finally continuing its breakout, up another 7.6%. Again, fueled by Musk's buy of an additional $1 billion in stock on Monday. So that gap up on Monday followed through, and it's just building this nice flag formation here. Still does not have the earnings and sales profile, however. And again, that's it for the Mag 7. Just wanted to show you real quick. The beta led the week up 2.9%, and the IBD 50 up 4.5%, but still well off those all-time highs. And the ARC Innovation, this is the RG8. This broke out. Our ARC Innovation up 8.13% as the momentum names accelerated throughout the week. Now let's get into the watch list. I'm going to skip the ETFs this week, but let's get right into the watch list since it's pretty long. 150 names, but I'm going to go through it really fast. Let's do a sort on this by, as always, composite and relative strength as the second sort here. Oh, I don't see my relative strength on there. We'll just go by composite. Again, IBD founder Bill O'Neill created the composite rating. Again, for some reason this week, our IBD stats are not coming up. Something must be wrong, or they're doing an update. However, on the screening side, they still have the numbers, so that's good. CCJ, Toddzilla Holding, closed at a new all-time weekly high, up 10% on the week. Again, I took a position in this last week as it kind of came off of this 50-day moving average here after this undercut here. and that followed through nicely this week, although there were much better names in the nuclear complex. So we'll see some of those names coming up. CLS extended, Credo, another 4.67% gain. We'll want to talk about this name again. We were in and out of this. I made some good money in it. I'm not in it right now, but we discussed as a team how you really want to focus on these triple digit earnings and sales. And these names really should be the main focus on your list. Again, this is extended, but this profile was developing back here when we took positions out of this earnings gap. Now, we didn't take positions till it broke through this trend here. And again, sold into strength up here and then sold in the break of the 21-day moving average. This was a pretty nice pullback here, and unfortunately, I got all out of it. But it did hold the 50-day moving average and follow through. So I do regret that, but still made a good trade on that. Light still holding this name. This was up another 3.5%. This has been an absolute monster with just a wall of blue, as James Rappel calls it, of huge volume. SoFi, nice 11.15% gain as it broke out throughout the week. Rambus followed through these storage stocks have just been monsters. This was up 18.9% this week. ANET coming up back up 7.3% after falling last week. Astera Labs, again, a GROTECTION and the Toddzilla holding up 6.84% again on the week, continuing to make new highs. Another triple digit earnings and sales, showing some deceleration coming up, but the beat and raises have been pretty big out of this company. AppLovin followed through on the S&P ad from 2 weeks ago. Bloom Energy, just a monster. TurboTection still holding a trailing position in this, up another 26% on the week, helping to fuel TurboTection's huge gains for the last month and a half. Pan American Silver, 2-week tight. Halozyme just tight. WGS, this is the name we showed with the IBD showing 25% growth both this year and next year, just consolidating. SE, this is a GROTECTION and a Toddzilla holding with very nice numbers, triple digits, still strong, 90, 50, 30, 40% earnings gains on 25% plus sales gains, just down 1.6% on the week. What a retail leader in Singapore, trading very well. Road continued its breakout into the profit-taking zone. Carmen, new IPO continuing on the week. Micron up 3.5%, 33% past the pivot, with coming into earnings next week. Sienna continuing up 5.4% on the week. HSAI in the LiDAR area, just trading really tight here along the ADMA. This is a name that I'm looking at. Continue to put alerts on this and watch how this develops. This is a Chinese name that's looking strong, coming up against these old highs as it's gotten rejected the last couple of weeks, building a nice consolidation there. Looking good. Palantir with a nice comeback this week, up 6.39%. Talked about this bounce off the 65-day exponential not shown in a bounce undercut of the 21 EMA. Catapult building this nice cup base. Research in the semiconductor equipment area up 8.5%. Again, this company serves the memory market, making a lot of the machinery for the development of memory chips, and you can see that nice breakout. SITM, another fabulous semiconductor company, up 20% this week. Not sure what the news was, but nice acceleration there. And in the mining area, Avgo, not much to say there. Seagate continuing with another 12% gain. Robinhood, new all-time closing high on the week. Mike Webster talked about this being a rare ascending base pattern. That's where you get highs to lows here, highs to lows here, and then a tightening here, and finally a breakout above that third high. So that's an ascending base breakout on huge volume on Friday. And this was the final add to the S&P, so that helped propel it. and this looks very good. And GROTECTION and Toddzilla are still in trailing positions in this, as this continues to show a good earnings profile as well as good momentum. Next tracker broke out to new highs this week, up 6.97%. Definitely the leader in the solar group. MongoDB, Toddzilla, and GROTECTION holding this stock. Had a little funky breakdown below the 8 EMA. However, did manage to close toward the mid-range, down 2% on the week, but we're still holding this as this earnings gap is still in play. Carvana, relative strength, making new highs on this name in this consolidation. Very strong name. Comfort continued on the week. Sterling Infrastructure continuing on the week. STINE, STNE. DoorDash, a GROTECTION holding, making some progress on the week, up 2.8%. American Superconductor with relative strength, making new highs on the week, up 9.2%. HIMS, up 4.18% on the week. This is another semiconductor equipment, up 5.6% on a nice base on base breakout this week. TTMI is another electronic contract manufacturer with a relative strength, making new highs. Again, my list has some smaller names on it, but the Russell's breaking out, and we've got a broader base, more momentum market. So I wanted to put a lot of names on here that are new and may not qualify for GROTECTION, but Turbo and Toddzilla can buy these names, and this one looks pretty attractive on the breakout. MCOR trading tight, 8 weeks now in a 12% range, multi-week tight. Solaris Energy Infrastructure. This is in the oil and gas area with a very strong earnings profile coming up here. You can see the triple-digit gains, as well as a big move this week through the cup with handle here. They're actually just a cup base, but taking a shot at those all-time highs going back here to spring of 2025, looking pretty attractive here. This is a power conversion company making new highs, up 10% on the week. FN contract manufacturer looking good. CommScope with a earnings gap and tight shelf formation here. Lower price stock, but again, just wanted to show a couple of these names. ASML building this big cup. This is a key semiconductor equipment company. Again, just in this big 48% base, but I imagine this gapped up with the news that NVIDIA is investing in Intel, and they're going to need some new equipment. Kratos Defense, which is the leader in drones, up another 16%. This is just consolidating. Corning Glass, another 3% gain. United Therapeutics, after this earnings gap, backed off and has now had a pretty nice week, up 3%. Dave put this on the list last week as a kind of a trend line break here. This was a nice mover back here, came back in and had a nice 3.9% gain on the week in the insurance area, insurance software. INO Day, we put this on the list last week, up another 12%. So you've had this pretty massive move from 36 to 70. So this is a candidate for a high tight flag. You've got a wall of blue here. Massive multi-day run up over 100% or at 100%, which is the qualification for a high tight flag. So let's watch for a consolidation in this name here over the next week or two, as it got rejected up here at the old high of 71. And if that thing can get tight, that could be a nice, again, high tight flag formation here. CNET put this on the list last week, up 5.9%, 5.6%. Affirm trading very nicely, up 10% here after this earnings gap pullback. Kind of a double bottom base formation coming up through this 93 area, could be another add point. Airgain with a breakout this week. Reddit, a Toddzilla holding, GROTECTION holding, up 4% on the week. Had a little bit of a wild week, interweek here. Some news on Google still with this antitrust stuff and affecting it, but both of these sell-offs ended up closing back toward the high end of the range. So that's what you want to see here. It did a reverse here off the highs, but nothing wrong with this. Still above the 80 MA and still trading above those all-time highs. And all it did this interweek is come back to these old highs from 822. So very strong. This is my biggest position. This is up there for GROTECTION, if not the biggest position. But again, you've got this beautiful liquid stock with very strong earnings and triple digit earnings nonetheless, as well as 40-50% plus earnings growth or sales growth. Shopify building this cup here up 6.9%. It's gotten very tight here. This is a nice flat base. So a lot of people are shying away from this because the relative strength has been a little bit off, not off, but flat. But watch for a breakout through this 165 area or 156 area. IREN, Toddzilla, and Turbo Holding up another 13.7%. And this was entered on the post-earnings gap pullback right on the 80 MA and more right here by both of us. And that has just been a beautiful trade from here. You can see another triple-digit sales and earnings grower. This is what you want to focus on. And again, this got through all-time highs back here. It hasn't looked back. So very strong in the data center area. Wayfair, 3 weeks kind of tight. Cloudflare trading tight. Here started up another 6.7% as this continues its move above these all-time highs. HWM up 2.4%. KLAC extension through the breakout up 8.38%. BILI, a Chinese name, up 6%. Had this nice launch into the pivot zone, still hanging up in there. Very strong earnings growth. Uh-oh. Let's go back. Had a little bit of a technical problem here. Almost done here, folks. Hang in there. A lot of names, unfortunately, as the market's very broad and strong. NU, with this big consolidation, this is a Brazilian fintech company. Broke through that pivot, and this has been pretty strong. This is kind of a funky stock, but nonetheless, it's coming up on these all-time highs from last December. So decent earnings growth, too. TEL is an institutional name. This was on IBD's mutual fund buys, 7.7 billion in new buys last month. And again, this is kind of like an Amphenol. It's a more quiet, calm stock in the data center connectivity area with fiber optic cabling, underseas. They do business with NVDA. They do business with Amazon, all the major telecom companies. And you can see this is just really tight. Relative strength, relatively flat. But if you're looking for a calmer name, this one fits the bill as a very good technical and heavily institutionally owned company. FTAI up 4%. Snowflake recovering up 4.2%. We thought this was going to be a pretty good one out of the gate on the earnings gap, but Snowflake has been a tough one to buy on earnings gaps and doesn't quite have that triple digit, but still has strong 25% earnings growth. Sales growth and earnings growth is very strong. Keep an eye on that. BTSG is a healthcare name that looks very strong. This is an IPO back here, and it's breaking out into new high territory after this big base on base pattern. Oklo, the monster of nuclear stocks last week, up 63%. Most likely a huge short squeeze, as I think over 30% of the float in this name was short. ORCL, Toddzilla took a position on this double bottom test of the 80 MA. Bought this on Wednesday here below $300. And my stop was going to be below this low, and it held that low. I added once it broke above 300. So again, this is a name I want to start accumulating. I've got a pretty good position in this right now. And the stock was trading higher in the after hours on the news of Meta putting a $20 billion deal together with them. So a lot of good news out of Oracle. Got some nice acceleration in sales. It doesn't have that triple digit earnings and sales profile, but you can see it's a nice sequential increase. And this is a big liquid institutional name. BWXT in the nuke space up 3.6%. AVAV, Toddzilla took a position in this week. Again, this is a name I've been focusing on anyhow, as it shows this triple digit sales and earnings growth. It's in the drone area. KTOS is clearly the leader, but I'm focusing on this one because it's got stronger growth. So I took a position on it as it broke back through this 50-day moving average and cleared this high of the reversal day from the week before last. Got some nice instant feedback on that. We'll add potentially on a breakout through Friday's highs as well as through these all-time highs. So I do like that, but KTOS, as you can see, is the leader. That was up 16% and in the new all-time high territory versus AVAV, which was up 14%. So, but I do like the base here. I do like the big flag it's building here. And I think this looks very attractive. Nice volume, 2 back-to-back weeks in a row, too. Uber, very nice base on base consolidation. Relative strength is flat, but a nice breakout on this could be a buy signal. Blackstone, also a name that looks good. Planet Labs, this was a huge gain. Smaller stock, probably shouldn't be on the list. MedSpace, relative strength making new highs. TKO, reversal this week. LEU, a TurboTection holding, helping that 5% gain on the week. Great job out of Turbo, just picking these momentum names and just working really nicely for them, up 32%. Zeta is a new name that's emerging here in the new stage 2 uptrend, up 5.6% here. Watching this as it gets through this 2102 level and see if it can accelerate. But this is a name that lower price stock. Titan Service, this is an IPO building a base boost. Very nice move this week, up 19%. This is riding its 10-week moving average very nicely, and this is a LiDAR name. Still losing money, but definitely a momentum name to watch. Alibaba continues up 5% this week. And this is a Turbo and a Toddzilla holding bought off of this 8 EMA back here and continuing to ride that big liquid China leader as it just breaks into new all-time highs last week into this giant base on base consolidation. And again, this is being driven by their new AI chip, as China's government wants all companies to get away from NVDA and has banned them all last week. Alibaba could be the company that replaces NVIDIA in China. This is a new IPO this week that came out very successfully and continues to run. Not sure what's going on here, but want to keep an eye on these. Take-Two Interactive with Grand Theft Auto coming out next winter here. This is building a tight base. Warby Parker, a little bit shy of volume, but numbers look good here. Looking at this base, as I want to add a few smaller names to the list. CrowdStrike, huge follow through on good news on Thursday with a nice pop on higher guidance. Again, this was a name we previewed in one of our podcasts as this earnings bounce off the 200-day. And what it do? It came back through, undercut, and then rallied through this 448 area, which was potentially your buy signal, if not the buy signal on the gap here. But this is definitely looking good. TripAdvisor, breakout and reversal, but this is a new name that may be entering into a new stage 2 uptrend. Caterpillar making new highs. That's not bearish. Zillow, not much to say there. Baidu, huge breakout. Put this on the list 2 weeks ago, and sure enough, had a massive 17% breakout through that long base. And the MP Materials, this is in all our portfolios on the buy. The buyback after getting stopped out on the 10-week moving average followed through up 15%. Another driver for Turbo, Toddzilla, and GROTECTION this week. GEV consolidating, SoundHound. This is a AI name that's still losing money, but it has a strong sales and still again more speculative, but up 15% on the week. And I do like the way this looks. And I do think voice is a big area for AI, and they're the leader in potentially perfecting this. As God knows, Apple hasn't done a very good job of it with Siri. So we want to keep an eye on this name. IONQ follow through after being added last week to the watch list, up another 26%. Tesla up another 7.6% this week. Talked about that. Coupang, not much here, up 1%. AAOI still consolidating. Symbotic looking very good. This is a robotics play that is building this cup base. And Connor talked about this, I believe, in Friday's podcast. That's coming up on these old highs from back in 23, again, after getting rejected and building this base. Quadruple U, the largest U.S. uranium producer, up 24% this week. This is a battery name that I'm tracking, still losing money, but huge acceleration in earnings coming up. EOSE, a Pittsburgh company, ramping up production of zinc batteries for the storage of electricity. TeraWulf up 2%. Vistra building that base here. This is the electric power producer, critical to the data center, putting that on the list. Celsius, a test of the 10-week moving average after Elliott Management is trying to get a position on the board of Pepsi and wanting to divest some of these areas. Not known whether Celsius will be one that they cut, but this is a company that Pepsi has a stake in, and Pepsi is distributing their Alani and Celsius energy drink. But nice test of the 10-week. Again, huge earnings growth and sales, triple digits. And again, we want to focus on these names and not lose sight of them. And this 10-week could be the opportunity to take a position in Celsius. Again, after this earnings gap here, nice run, pull back. This is definitely a potential area to buy off that 10-week. Tempus AI, a TurboTection holding, up 2% on the week, getting real tight, 2-week tight now. RGTI, huge breakout in the quantum space. Nebus follow through. Rocket Lab pulling back to the 10-week. Not much to say here. Sale Point, this is a name I put on the list. IPO base, this is in the security area, building out this right side here. Watching this name as earnings and sales look pretty good. Unity looks good. Hinge Health consolidating. CoreWeave, this is a Toddzilla. TurboTection and now a GROTECTION holding as it is able to build above this 50-day moving average. This is NVIDIA's. NVIDIA's got a lot of billions invested in this company, and CoreWeave is the first company to get all the leading NVIDIA chips and allocations. So they are a huge data center supporting generative AI. And you can see that you've got several positive things going here. First, stock's ability to make a massive move. Okay. Then you had this sell-off, double bottom structure here, as well as now a trend line break. So this is definitely building a beautiful shelf as it reclaimed the 50-day moving average. Again, I did a speculative buy on this off that double bottom, which turned out to be very good, and then add back to it into this post-gap area. And again, we're building positions in this name. This was a big move. Again, probably another IPO that just put on the list with triple-digit sales and earnings coming ahead. BMNR, this is a Ethereum play. Intel with a big gap this week on the NVIDIA. Broke into a new stage 2 uptrend with relative strength making new highs. So this could be a buy, folks. New IPO, and that is it for the list. All right. Thank you for listening to this weekend's Weekend Review. If you have any questions on anything we talked about today, my email is todd@revereasset.com. You can follow me on Twitter at ToddMichael70. If you'd like to become a client, our number is 855-REAL-WEALTH. Ask to speak to Dan Stewart or Don Vandenborg. We appreciate likes, shares, and subscriptions to our YouTube and our Twitter handles. Thanks and have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.